Our next speaker is Margherita Rubin, and she is from Russia. So Margherita is 20 years old. She works as a programmer in Russia, and to this moment, she's the leader of a group of lesbian feminists in her city, Yekaterinburg in Central Ural. She's been a feminist activist for 3 years, and to be honest, activism is the whole point of Margarita's life, she says. So thank you so much, and over to you, Margarita.
Hello, everybody. Today I will speak about lesbian feminism in Russia, and I should notice that my presentation is expanding my speech, so I recommend you to look at it while I speak. First of all, it should be noted that the history of women's liberation in Russia is not consistent. Due to weak generation connections between generations, the women's movement often forgets its own experience and history. Therefore, 3-4 years is usually enough to set the progress back where it started. Young women come not knowing what the women in the movement did before them. This is perhaps the main characteristic of our history. After the collapse of USSR, the women's liberation movement had to start from the beginning. In the 19th, women created non-government organizations, participated in politics, and worked with Western foundations, for example, Swiss anti-trafficking organizations. As of 2004, there were more than 1,500 women's organizations educating and helping women. Around 2010, with the explosion of social media and the translation of second-wave feminist books to Russian, feminism started gaining popularity. There were books of Andrea Dworkin, Adrienne Rich, Marilyn Fry, Sheila Jeffers, Valerie Solanas, Shalomit Firestone, and others. Around 2016, Lyubov Kalugina and her comrades began the campaign to popularize political lesbianism, which was successful despite pushback. A lot of political lesbian communities were created, and a lot of women have rejected their compulsory heterosexuality and became lesbians. There were also offline events and discussion groups about political lesbianism and attempts to create women's communes. The growing government repression forced a lot of lesbian feminists to leave the country and caused the remaining activists to abandon the main online platform. In 2022, most political lesbian communities have either closed or moved to other platforms, such as Telegram. So, what we have now? The way radical feminist communities function and organize themselves is hindered by the high degree of atomization in modern Russian society. As a result, Telegram has a lot of private blogs and chats which exist either isolated from each other or in the state of ideological disagreement. TikTok and Twitter are also responsible for popularizing radical feminism in Russia. However, the issue with those platforms that it often confuses liberal and radical ideas, which leads to conflict between lesbian feminists and others. Political lesbianism can be considered pretty popular in general. Nevertheless, the Russian radical feminist community is highly active, even if mostly restricted to online activism. Some radical feminist groups have thousands of members. There are a lot of lesbian feminist groups as well, but they are less popular, ranging from tens to hundreds of members. Offline activist groups are typically small, but they exist even as far as Siberia. It's important to note that Marxist and communist ideas are popular in post-Soviet countries. Since the war in Ukraine, Marxist ideas became even more popular among radical feminists. There are even communities that confuse feminism and socialism so much that they consider socialist revolution to be the main goal of women's liberation movement. The women that join the political lesbian community are mostly very young. On the slide, you can see the results of the poll, where 210 women took part. Most of them are 70 to 21 years old. a thought are 22 to 27 years old, and there is a small number of teenagers younger than 16 and women older than 30. Also, because Russia is multinational country, lesbian feminism includes not only Slavic women, but also women of Caucasian and Siberian nationalities. Despite the high level of atomization and a lot of ideological conflicts, there exists a lesbian feminist culture which expresses itself through memes and works of art. Now I want to show you some examples of it. This is one of the most favorite memes in the community. This is the reference to a catchphrase of a god in video game Skyrim. Once I was hetero too, but then I became a rat femme. Being a lesbian isn't your choice, it's mine. You're a lesbian now. This meme was created because we tired of women rejecting lesbian vision. This meme is about system thinking. The women on the meme disagree that the system of patriarchy just should be fixed, and she agrees that we have to destroy the whole system. And this is my favorite meme. Yekaterinburg is a capital of lesbian feminism. Yekaterinburg is a city in Russia, and we made it because there was a group of lesbian feminists, and we are pretty active. And now some examples of political lesbians art in Russia. Female friendship is the basis of fighting against the male supremacy. This was made for Vesnitsa in 2020. This is the painting I made for Radical Feminist art book we made in 2023. Women Uproot the Patriarchy. This drawing was created specially for lesbian feminist community Lesanki in 2024. And this was created specially for radical feminist community art meetings. This community help women find each other and find new connections. And now about political situation in Russia and our main problems. Russian feminism is different from the Western one in a lot of ways due to a different government agenda. Russian society is still mostly influenced by the classic patriarchy. The issues women face also depend on region. For example, there are Muslim republics in Russia where women face particularly harsh treatment. Trans ideology is not enforced by the government and is merely an online annoyance. The main problems are access to abortions, domestic violence. If you know, domestic violence has been decriminalized in Russia, lesbophobia, and radical conservative values. The main obstacle for Russian feminists and activists is our oppressive government. For more than 10 years now, we as feminists have been living in a constant fear. With the restrictions our government imposes on our freedom of speech getting worse every day. Let me illustrate. In 2014, LGBT propaganda was banned among minors. You have probably heard about it. By banning non-traditional sexual relationships, Russia has set its course on traditional conservative values. Recently, in 2023, our Supreme Court declared LGBT as an extremist organization. Our authorities have declared a lot of things they don't like as extremist or anti-tradition propaganda. A few months ago, our parliament banned child-free propaganda too. So in Russia, it's terrorism to be a lesbian or to spread the idea that it's normal not to want to have kids. For things such as merely speaking about being lesbian, about choosing lesbianism, about living for your own enjoyment, unmarried and without kids, you may be forced to pay a fine, put in jail, be fired, or expelled. Neither neither in social networks nor in science, I mean sociology, universities, education, art, books, songs, movies, and even with your classmates, colleagues, neighbors, and parents, you can't always be honest about being lesbian. However, the law is not universally enforced, and this is the reason why me, my friends, and our community of lesbian feminists in Russia is still there. But there is a constant risk since we are silenced on federal level. The law enforcers don't come for everyone, but they come for someone, so you never know who is going to be next. In 2018, they arrested and tried to accuse a feminist and one of the first political lesbian activists in Russian internet, Lyubov Kalugina, of man-hating, which is a criminal offense, for memes on her social media account. On the slide is some information about her case. The persecution had lasted for 3 years, and she left the country as she did feminist activism. They also came for Julia Tsvetkova, info is on a slide. She was arrested for illegal production and traffic of porn. Her artworks, Vagina's Monologues, was used as a proof, and you can see on the slide this paintings is what our government think porn is. They came twice for Tatiana Sukharova in 2014, and then she even spent several months in jail, and recently after her protest against ban on child-free propaganda. So she also left the country. And a lot of feminists have left the country too since the war in Ukraine. And now the political situation is only going to get worse and worse. Our authorities spend a lot of effort suppressing protest moods. They especially devote a large amount of resources to the law enforcement to protect themselves from the people. In Russia, the empathies is on the ideological agenda of conservative values, and even though the restrictive laws are against the constitution of Russian Federation, this does not stop them from what they are doing. Other post-USSR countries such as Belarus and Kazakhstan have similar problems. So yes, we have autocracy issues here. However, it doesn't stop feminists. All kinds of feminist activists use all the tools available to them. Here we tell you about the types of feminist activism which are prevalent in Russia. Currently, in Russia, there are about 14 non-government organizations that provide legal and psychological aid for women as well as shelter for violence victims. In addition, there are also a number of unofficial groups that help women. For example, as a response to the laws that made access to abortions more difficult, the Emergency Contraception Fund was created to provide free contraception to every woman who needs it. The founder runs a Telegram blog where she spreads news about reproductive rights and the truth about contraception, pregnancy, and childbirth. Some activists and groups translate feminist literature and distribute it using public and private blogs, making important text more accessible to wider audience. The blogs have 3 to 10,000 of followers. Russian feminists actively record and distribute podcasts on different platforms, using them as a tool of education and support. In these podcasts, they discuss women's rights, pressing social issues, and read excerpts from feminist literature. The most well-known feminist podcasts are A Room of One's Own and FemTalks. Activist groups such as Little Sisters hold lectures about women's rights. Some women organize online and offline feminist reading groups. Activists also run educational blogs where they share their knowledge and raise important social issues, promoting the feminist ideas and bringing new women into feminism. Some activist groups hold women's events and parties such as New Year and Halloween celebrations and create communities that help women find and meet each other. And what about our plans? Different lesbian feminists have different visions of the future. Some aim to create feminist political parties and to gradually subdue the democratic institutions to advance their interests. Some dream of revolution and military coup, which is certainly inspired by the communist sentiment, which is popular in post-Soviet territories, as I said before. What are our plans as a group of lesbian feminists? Well, our main goal is to survive. Today, we're trying to recover and preserve the experience of feminists that came before us because it's vitally important and nothing will change if we let them be forgotten. We're trying to expand our community and befriend other feminist communities without harming our lesbian vision. Personally, I would say that as lesbian feminists, we should aim to create possibilities for women. If the main principles of radical feminism are to choose women, to advance genocentrism and lesbianism, then without creating possibilities for women and making these ideas reality, we will remain in powerless stagnation. To create opportunities, one should accumulate human and financial resources. For example, we as women are more inclined to choose humanitarian sciences and careers, which is why it's so easy to find a female psychologist, teacher, and designer, and why it's so difficult to find a woman who can fix your washing machine, help with house repairs, teach you how to invest, who is a welder or electrician. So, how do you choose a woman when there is no women to be found? Creating opportunities is also about developing the lesbian culture. I believe that if we can create a true counterculture, which lesbianism is, women will enthusiastically join it. I'm confident that if women have somewhere to go to leave the male culture, they will not want to return to it. Today, we can't confidently say that we have such a culture or a real feminist movement. This is my long term plan. The short term plan is to preserve ourselves, our lesbian ideology and principles, to support each other and to create a lesbian feminist network that excludes liberal collaborationists. Not to let ourselves be assimilated in male political movements in exchange for tiny advancements that will be taken from us in a few years. A lot of feminists worry that they don't do enough and have no right to call themselves feminists. Among ourselves, we joke that at our age, we're supposed to have completed several feminist revolutions. The conditions of our lives have changed a lot since the Western second wave, and now it's important to not give in to the male demand for women's self-sacrifice. Certainly, there are hard times for lesbian feminism, but until we decide to give up, lesbian feminism will live on. Thank you. This is all.